Okay, so working on our solar system assignment, mainly concentrating on bump maps and different types of textures to put on your planets, image-based textures, any kind of textures with like specular type noises or anything like that, and putting these Saturn rings on right here and making sure the UV maps are kind of turned a little bit. So I turned the, you notice on this one right here, I turned the transparency down on the actual planet, or on the actual geometry itself, to kind of give it like a little see-through, kind of like see through it, kind of how they really would be, just because I wanted to. And yeah, so, and that's the stuff we kind of already went over. But what I want to kind of just talk about today, or just kind of go over for your render picks, just to make sure you can render these things out and not just screenshots. I think we should start trying to migrate from that, getting used to the render settings and stuff like that. These are your render settings. We probably went over this before. Resolution, I'm just going to crank mine at 1280 720. Now with this project, I don't really require it, or don't really suggest you do an Arnold render, because a lot of you probably want to use this glow effect and stuff like that, and they will not show up in the Arnold render. Plus, these are all standard surface shaders, which kind of hard for the Arnold render to see. Plus, this way we don't need lights in here, so kind of works. Basically, if I just put a render on it now, and if you render your picture out and it's really bright, but then you save it, it's because you had the gamma turned on. If you notice, this little thing was on and it was really bright. Whenever you save this image now, you're saving it as the raw image, which is going to be that right there. So if your glow goes away, so if you want to save it with the brighter image with the gamma, you need to go and open this colored management view, transform embedded. I just do the raw image. I just always turn this off and try to make it look the best it can, because honestly it doesn't overexpose it, in other words. So yeah, so anyway, that's just your resolution there. Now, say you want to put like some background to it, because if I save this, if you want to, you can just save this image out. Basically, if you don't have anything running in your background, you can just save this image. If you save it as a JPEG, you're going to get a black background, but I would suggest save it as a PNG. This is Video Planet Demo. Save it to your desktop or in your image folder. Open up Photoshop. Find the image. You'll notice it has a white background. And you can basically add any background you want in there to it. So if I just wanted to add a black background here, I don't know why I would do that, but I went and found some cool little space background textures, which you can find these anywhere. Preferably ones that are going to match the resolution of your picture. Bigger is better always. 900 by 720. It's going to stretch some. I'm looking for 1920 1080. There's some good ones. I'm going to leave that one. Let's save it. Make sure if it's, someone's, you credit them or don't steal things. I'm sure these are all free base, whatever you want to use. So, and just save it as a JPEG. Now you can go up to File. I just go Place Embedded, and I find my image. Fits it perfectly. Now, if you're not used to Photoshop, it will bring it in with this little X mark. That means you need to hit the selection button over here to actually embed it in there. And now it's covered up the other image, because if you notice, you have your layer tab over here in Photoshop. You need to move the background basically below it. So, and it looks like it did try to render out some of the astral belt I kind of made through there. Kind of curious if it did. What I was curious is this astral belt I've kind of made with the paintbrush. I'll show you here in just a minute. I'm not sure if it was rendering out, but it looks like it may have. It wasn't in class, so creating a. Oh yeah, it is a little bit. See it here and there. Probably need to crank some of the settings up to really get it to kind of render through, because like on the actual image it rendered, because it had something to paint to. In other words, I think those students were coming up with an issue of it's not rendering, because it's actually, well, we'll go over that in just a minute. But anyway, you have your image that you found off the internet, and you just add it to the background, and you can kind of blur this a little bit to kind of make it, if it's the resolution's a little twerky on it, not really wanting to, you can go up to your filter, your blur, just a Gaussian blur, and bring this box up. You can kind of adjust it down. And then I would suggest, if you're compositing a background in there, to add a adjustment layer, so you can kind of make them look the same. In other words, in adjustment layers, you can go to your window adjustments, but I already have my window up here. The curves is what I always like to use. You just go down to your red and kind of start bringing out, taking things down, find those nice little filters on there, find that right amount. So you kind of like piece it together. So the sky's the limit with this, making it look good in post. In other words, bringing your rendering out your planets and not the alpha channel in the back. If you get it looking like you want to in Maya, you're perfectly fine on just saving this as a JPEG, and it will render out basically with the black background. You have to change it down here to JPEG. So then if I open this up, I just don't have any of the stars in the back. Now, how was I putting stars in Maya if you don't want to go into Photoshop? You could go and add a sphere, make it really big. You're going to want to reverse the normals, mesh display, reverse normals. That way, if you go inside, any image that you apply to this kind of dome basically will appear on the inside, and you'll always, have that everywhere you pan or everywhere your camera is, you'll be able to see where everything's at. So let me go and apply a new material. Actually, let me just apply one that's already I have floating around in this. Which I'm not sure if I do. You should be well trained in the UV editor. I'm going to add a Lambert. Don't want any reflection basically off. I just want to file. There's a space around it. So I'm going to add it to this. So it's added. Just the only thing you're going to have to deal with on that factor is your resolution. It's really stretched. And we went over this with the UV editor. You can actually kind of go into your UV editor. This is all covered in the UV editor video. You can select the show. Maybe if you can scale this down a little bit. Scale up. Now I have basically black and white for the stars, so you won't really see a lot of the tiles, basically, because if I had like kind of we ran into some of the problems with the planets with the seams. This is kind of more or less a seamless picture, so it's tiled over, but you can't really notice it because of the actual texture. It's just stars, black and white, so you don't really see any of the lines. So I kind of got lucky on that factor. But if you were to add a photo that had a high contrast at some points, you would actually see the object tiling, like right there on the material view. You can kind of see it. So you can do that, and then you can render out a picture there. Not too bad, but you'll have to save this one as a JPEG. So you can kind of see, I think, some of the tile. I don't know if you can see that through on the monitor where the picture ended. So you have to find that placement that you, yeah, see the way the color changes. That's because everything got stretched, but there are ways around it. You know, you can figure it out. It's kind of a way of getting used to the UV editor, scaling stuff around. Turn it. Yep, see, there's my tile right going through there. Now, what I was doing was showing you in class is kind of like just a fun little trick I like to do with these paint tools to make these little clusters kind of go through, and you can actually paint a whole background if you wanted to. But the only thing about these things, it doesn't really exactly work like geometry. It's just basically painting like a particle line in there. And I'll send another tutorial too on this, basically, or some alternate ones on there, because it's just something I kind of recently started doing, but it kind of has a cool look to it. There's a few settings you've got to there's a few settings you've got to do to kind of make them go through, but the only thing is if you go to your Maya hardware, they don't render, or your Arnold, obviously, which everything won't render very nicely in Arnold because we're not really dealing with Arnold shaders and lights yet, so we'll just stick with the Maya software. But you can kind of make like a little cluster. And I thought I was saving these things just a minute ago in Photoshop. I was saving them without it. That's what was kind of confusing because I wasn't really doing it in class. But obviously they are coming through a little bit, so you can kind of just mess with the settings some. And I'll show you what I'm talking about. So I'll delete these. So you'll want to go up to your Generate in your Modeling tab. You'll go to Get Brush. Where's it at? Get Brush. This whole new world pops up here with all these fun things that you can paint on. And we'll get a little bit more into this, or you'll explore this. But I'll go down as a galactic and just start. You can try any of these, really. I haven't really tested them out. I just try this right here. Select that one. This is kind of what we're going to be painting here. And then all of a sudden you've got this brush on here, and this brush is kind of hard to envision and see because it basically, you won't be able to see the line. It doesn't work like a curve tool, but watch here, whenever I paint across here, I've clicked on it and then I've kind of rounded it out, and it's kind of like let me a little line of these little particles coming off here. And if you go over to your attribute editor now, go to your galaxy attribute, you can start adjusting basically the way some of these look. Let's go to your view. Alrighty, you can see it. It painted it on there, but I kind of want to adjust like glow and stuff like that. And I think this is how you would tweak these things right here to make them come through in the render. So I'm going to kind of keep this one on the next screen so I can kind of show you how they kind of alter when we mess with these. Your brush profile, just kind of mess with this some, kind of makes them do different things here. You can scale this actual thing. You want to go to shading, just the color on it, turn them bright blue. The tube shading, another type of color to it. Then there is the shadow, the glow effect. This thing, crank this thing up. I'm gonna change my glow color to like yellow, no, purple. So this was my cluster, I think, yeah, these things don't have like control vertexes on them. Like I said, I'm kind of new to this. I've never really, I've messed with the paint before, but the 3D paint tool, but it's always been on an object. But they turned out pretty cool in some of the little Maya software renders. Oh yeah. Now, a few things you have to have set on here, I've found out that kind of make them pop. Go into your render settings, go to your Maya software and go down to paint effects rendering option. Make sure this oversample, because if not, I don't believe the glow doesn't come through, which I need to turn the glow up a little bit. Too much different. Just really crank that glow up to like 2. See what happens. Yeah, I'm starting to. And you could save this as a JPEG, or say this is a JPEG come through. You could paint like, you know, numerous ones back there. You could duplicate this, Control D. You notice in your outliner, you can keep up with them. I'm going to kind of alter this one, and I'm going to make it a different color. My blue color different too. Get some cool spots. And I wonder what you can tweak to kind of make it come through with the actual PNG file. But that could be for another time. I don't want to spend time video-wise doing that. So I'll just render this out here. It's got some really nice glow to it. This could be the one. Maybe you just need to crank the some of these things here to go tweaking them back. Let me save this image as a PNG. This will be my final test before the end. I want to open this up in Photoshop. Did I send it to my desktop? There. Oh, I think it did. Yeah, it came through. So I'm going to place that star background. Kind of illuminated through the transparency of the geometry itself, which I think it was actually on top of the geometry, which may be why it actually came through. Yeah, it was kind of running. Well, no, not really. Yeah, it's just illuminating through the geometry, which is kind of a cool effect. Space, the final frontier. So I hope this helps in making the solar system cool. Like I said, drop some objects in there. Some rocket ships. You want to make a rocket ship? Build your rocket ship, put in there. Any kind of thing you'd see in space. You know, think about it. Some rockets, some satellites, maybe an alien UFO, and render out some cool shots there. And like I said, add some renders, not screenshots, because you can't get all these nice effects and these composite looks and the glow effects and everything. So they turn out really nice too, especially when you got some cool different planets in there. So have fun with this, guys, and we will reconvene next week. Okay. Bye-bye.